presenting a folk tale that may not be familiar to many of us, especially if we are native Floridians. Our warm, sunny weather is an antithesis of this story. The story begins in 1910 and endures to this day. Thomas's goal is to present the tale in an entertaining and enjoyable manner with vivid imagery and vocal variety. Thomas also has an ulterior motive: to not use the word "so" during the presentation. I present Thomas Blake.
The folk tale from the storytelling manual: tall tales and short stories. Is anyone here from Minnesota? Don't you know now? Let's have a thought. No one from Minnesota? This story, most of it happens in the great state of Minnesota. Paul Bunyan is a folk hero that started in 1910 when he was popularized by newspapermen across the country. He embodies frontier self-reliance and hard work, what we should all be. If you can't tell, this is my attempt to look rugged and frontiersman-like. Things going there. This beard is all it's going to be. 4 days worth. I want to start to let you know this is going to be interactive. So if I say it was so cold, you say,
how cold was it?
Or he was so big,
how big was he?
There you go. Let's start at the beginning, which is always a good place to start. 1910, the birth of Paul Bunyan. We know how people are born, right? Naturally, cesarean, or delivered by storks. Most accounts say that Paul Bunyan was not born in Minnesota. He was born in Bangor, Maine. And he was so big.
How big was he?
Well, he was so darn big that it took 5 storks working in tandem to deliver him. Ooh. He was a big boy. 2 cows worked overtime just to provide for his milk every day. He ate so much porridge that they had to keep the kitchen open 24 hours to feed him. He was that freaking big. He was a big boy. Moving on, by the time he was 1 year old, we all know the darling of the Democrats, Hillary Clinton.
Oh, jeez.
You know I'm going to go there. Well, one time Hillary Clinton said, "It takes a village to raise a child." Now, I don't believe many things that any Democrat says, but in this case, this was a true statement. It did take a village to raise Paul Bunyan. By the time he was 1 year old, the seamstresses of the town were working 24/7 to provide his clothing. The buttons on his coat were wagon wheels.
Oh.
A big boy, wasn't he? That's how big he was. He had a pal. It wasn't really a pal because it was a girl. I should call it a girl pal. Babe, pal, there you go. Babe the blue ox. Blue? Really blue? How many things in nature are blue besides blueberries? Like nothing. Well, never mind. You were supposed to say, wow, not many things are blue. What is the color for heat?
Red.
What's the color for cold?
Blue.
That's why Babe was blue. Because Paul was out wandering the vast state of Minnesota. He came across an oxen who was at the time was very, very little in the snow. So of course she was so cold that she became blue and apparently stayed that way forever. Babe ended up being a very big oxen, of course, and she ate so much.
How much did she eat?
Well, she would eat just as a snack, 6 bales of hay with the wire still on them. So she became a big girl. The amazing feats of Paul Bunyan. If I were to tell all of them, it would take way more than the 10 minutes and 59 seconds that I've been allotted. So let me tell you some of the amazing feats of Paul Bunyan. Just a few of them, to whet your appetite. The Mississippi River. Now, we all think that the Mississippi River was formed by natural causes, but it really wasn't. What happened, Paul and Babe were in Minnesota, and Babe had a big watering trough, and it sprang a leak. That leak was so big.
How big was
Oh
it?
yeah, it was so big that it started at the headwaters of the Mississippi, what's now the Mississippi, all the way down to New Orleans.
Wow.
That's why we had the Mississippi River. Go figure. Amazing feats. Lake Michigan. How many Great Lakes are there? 7?
7.
Okay, there you go. I'm from Florida. The Lake Michigan was not formed by natural causes. Oh no, Babe was thirsty.
How thirsty was she?
Well, she was so thirsty that Paul had to dig out the Lake Michigan just so she could have enough water. Isn't that amazing? And these are all true stories. The Black Hills of South Dakota. Anybody been to the Black Hills of South Dakota?
Yep.
Well, I haven't been there. I've been to Minnesota. You would think that the Black Hills of Minnesota were naturally formed because of whatever formed hills. That is not true. That is totally not true. That is not how the Black Hills of Minnesota was formed. Were formed, rather. Oh no. Paul Bunyan's still alive. He lives to this day. He was born in 1910, so he must be 100 and something years old, right? Paul, from some accounts that I read, is deceased. Paul, did I say Paul or Babe?
Paul.
I meant Babe, because Paul's still alive.
Yeah.
Well, when they buried Babe, the mounds over Babe's grave is or are the Black Hills of South Dakota. They were not naturally formed. Oh no, that would never happen. That would be a hideous tale to think that they were naturally formed. The greatest tale is really the tale, the year, thank you, the year of 2 winters. Now, if you've ever been through one Minnesota winter, it's bad enough. This was the year of 2 winters. The snow was not white, it was blue. The geese that flew south for the winter flew backwards. It was so cold.
How cold was it?
Even the fish migrated south for the winter. It was cold. When anybody said anything, the word froze in the air. And then you wouldn't hear them until the next morning. And one account was they were so cold.
How cold were they?
Well, you didn't hear anything until there was a thaw. And the thunder was so big.
How big was it?
It was so big that it rumbled and shook all the structures in Chicago. Isn't that amazing? Amazing feats. There was also the story of the frozen flames. You can imagine what happened. Flames don't usually freeze, but it was so cold.
How cold was it?
It was so cold that the flames on all the lanterns froze. And even Paul Bunyan, the Minnesotan, could not blow them out. Now we start talking about Minnesota, and you know that's called, that's the land of 1,000 lakes. Do you think those lakes were formed naturally?
Yes.
Well, they weren't. Oh, of course not. During one of those winters, they were slogging around Minnesota, and what were they leaving? Footprints. And that's why there are 10,000 lakes in the great state of Minnesota. Of course, we all know that I went to Minnesota lately. If my computer would work, which technology often doesn't, I have a nice picture of me with Paul and Babe in Bemidji, Minnesota. And I'm at the very bottom with arrows pointed at me, because you can't see me because they're so big. Because Paul is 2.5 tons and Babe is 6 tons in Bemidji, Minnesota. So I invite you to learn more about. I invite you to learn about Minnesota, not during the winter though. It's a great place in the spring, summer, and fall, unless you're like the grumpy old man, like Reed, and you like to ice fish with an ice house. There's a website that if my computer were working, you could write down, but it's www.exploreminnesota.com. And then you could be like me, and you could catch a walleye. That's the story of Paul Bunyan. Thank you.